Hello and welcome back to Building on a Budget Models. I'm Thomas and this is the final part of the BMW Z8 build in 1/24th scale by Revell. Having let the Mr. Super Clear cure for 6 days, I then moved on to wet sanding the body. I first did this using 3000 grit sandpaper, going in an up and down action, not in a circle because that would cause deeper marks to be made. I then moved on to 2500 grit sandpaper, taking care around raised parts such as the window washer jets. I then used the UMP Polishing system. A more in-depth guide to how to use this is in the McLaren MP44 video, which is linked above. But I started with the compound, which should flatten it down a little bit more, as you can see here in the middle, and then moved on to part 2, which is the polish. All of these are done in straight up and down or left and right pattern. Then the wax was put on in circular motion. Then once it had dried, it was wiped off before I then used the shine. Good thing about the shine is that you can apply that again later, which I did. Now the chrome parts here, the kidney shapes, which are referred to as by BMW, I don't think they're kidney shaped myself, but there we are. Leave the outsides chrome and add some semi-gloss black to the kind of vents, and I'll add a little light to those later. Now these vents on the side also show where the indicator is, and there'll be a little BMW decal that go on there. Firstly, I painted the vents black, but the kind of vertical slits needed to remain chrome. So what I did was, once I painted it, I then got a cotton bud and pushed it in far enough to wipe off the kind of the tallest parts, and I was really pleased with how this looked at the end. I painted these surrounds for these light housings in black, taking care not to get the bulbs black, as I wanted to keep those reflective. Now this vent here on the front also needs to be black. I thought about masking this, but I decided that with a steady hand I could carefully paint it. Now these fit in very nicely. In fact, this went in without any glue at all, although I did find that when I was fitting the body later, one of them did pop out, so I did then glue that one on the reverse. I decided against adding missiles to mine. Unfortunately, these don't fit quite as flushly with the bodywork as I would like. I think if you were unhappy with this, you might be able to sand them out a little bit, but you know, from distance you won't really notice. Now these light parts here didn't actually fit very well and they kept on popping out, so I chose to sand around the edges a little bit to make them a little bit smaller, and then I felt that they fit in much better. These tail lights I did using a thin pointed red Sharpie. And cleared up any mess using a cotton bud. Both the soft top and the windscreen are found on the clear sprue. I painted the windscreen surround from the inside, which is quite nice because you can use semi-gloss black to do both the frame of the window and the kind of black trim which they have around the outside. These lines were really nicely marked out, so no need for any masking here. Pretty happy with how that looks. Obviously let it dry, and then any parts where the paint has gone on a little thinly, just then go over with some extra paint. Pretty happy with that. The roof, however, because I wanted it to have that kind of vinyl-y leather texture, I painted the black matte straight on top, taking care not to get it onto the window. However, because this is Revell acrylic, it scratches off really nicely, so whenever I did get a little bit on the rear windscreen, I just used a cotton bud to scratch it off. Not sure whether I'll use this yet, but it's nice to know it's there. Now this central brake light at the back is incredibly thin and there isn't a decal for it, so I put some masking tape around where it needed to go. Cotton bud is really useful to press it into place. Make sure that the gap exposed was the same width on all sides. And then once I'd done that, I used the same thin Sharpie to do a very thin red line along there to represent this central brake light. Not sure what the actual name is for this light. If you know, you could let me know. And there we are, I'm pretty pleased with how that looks. I added these lights at the front using a little bit of PVA. Just putting a little bit around the edge and then sticking the light in. And then using the cotton bud to firmly push it into place. I really like the look of these lights on the grille. These are actually the high beam lights. When you look at them, you'd think that they were the fogs. I don't think I'll saw mine in half. After I'd sanded these down, they fit much better. There's actually a little tab at the back of them which fits in, and just a little bit of super glue around there kept them in really nicely. Make sure the super glue has cured before adding the headlight lenses, as if any of it seeps around the edge, you could inadvertently fog up the glass for the headlights. Now the interior tub here and the floor I found very, very difficult to install. The bodywork on this is made of very stiff, thick plastic, and I just couldn't seem to get it into place, even when I used some tools to try and bend it out. After much struggling, the interior tub actually fell away from the floor of the car, and I found that it went together much more easily like this. And then it was easier to fit this into place as well. As you can see, the suspension at the front needs to be lined up with the holes in the kind of wheel arches, and the body itself needs to be kind of prized around the floor. Now I was happy that the body had gone on. I then added the BMW decals for these vents on the side. Obviously you can add these at any part, but I decided that now they'd be much less likely to be scratched. Use a little bit of micro set to keep these in place, and when they'd set after a day or so, I then went over with a little bit of clear gloss. Remember that the front wheels are slightly narrower than the real ones. I did a quick test fit. These are not secured in place via pressure. In fact, if you just push them on, they will fall off. So I just put a little bit of poly cement on the inside and then fit them into place. Now these are the sun visors as well as the rear view mirror. I used a little bit of this aluminium plumber's tape foil and pushed it onto the outline of the rear view mirror and then cut that out. And then wherever anywhere kind of went over the edge of the mirror, I just got a black Sharpie and just painted over the border. There's also a little red button on the underside of this, which I believe turns on the interior reading lights. But a little bit of PVA in place in the slot to fit these together and let it cure before fitting it to the car. This part goes at the back of the car, and there are two chrome exhaust pipes which I put a little bit of anthracite on the inside just to give it the look of depth. This fits quite nicely, but I used super glue here as it didn't click into place, so it would have fallen off. There are 2 slots for the windscreen to go in here, and I used just a little bit of PVA glue, and I held it in place for a short time to stop it from falling out. The front number plate here just clips into place very nicely, and that also hides any errors you may have made around the edge of the front vent. Now the headlight lenses at the front need a black trim around them, as you can see here. So as I would normally do, I sand these as smooth as possible and then use a black Sharpie to go around the edge. There's also a little sort of semicircular shape at the front of these, a shape which I've also seen on some Jaguar headlights. Not quite sure what this is about, but it's present on here. Then just use a little bit of PVA around the edge. I test fitted it first to make sure it was the right side, and then put it into place. This fits quite well, but you do need to be very careful once fitting it. The wing mirrors are from the chrome sprue, and there's also a little mirror to go on the inside. There's really helpful slots to fit them into place on the side of the door. Just a little bit of super glue into the little slot, and then a little bit of pressure to hold them in place, and they look really great. I think the idea of having chrome wing mirrors like this in the 90s must have seemed very old-fashioned. Now the door handles, which are also in chrome, fit really nicely. I just put a couple of dots of super glue into the position and then slid them into place, making sure to get the right ones round. Here I am just using a little bit of clear gloss on the BMW badge. There are little holes to fit the windscreen wipers into place. I found that the pins for these holes were a little bit too wide, so I sanded them thinner, but they both went in really nicely. Then the window washer jets on the bonnet are actually supposed to be in chrome, so I added a little bit of monochrome just on top. Not something you can really see, and you probably wouldn't notice it if you didn't realise it was there, but I think it's a nice little touch. I chose to go with the roof open, and the kind of covered roof here at the back. You can see that's what it would look like with the roof on, and there's the roof cover at the back, which kind of sits very tightly in place. And here's the finished car. A couple of additions I made were the panel lines with a black Gundam marker, and also I found a spare Taxidis decal which I put in the window. Thank you very much for watching. Please do comment, like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.